discipline of love. We said something about karma yoga, the method of somehow cutting off the tentacles of our selfishness that we attach to our actions that we do in the behalf of other people. We know that we find ourselves crippled by the fact that we can only do something for somebody if that person continually satisfies our pleasures. If their behavior remains pleasing to us, then we can allow our love to flow, you see, but we cannot disconnect ourselves from that selfish expectation. One of the most effective ways to prepare your attitude for doing karma yoga is to do everything in the service of God. That all of the fruits of your actions be dedicated to God. You yourself take yourself out of the situation. You see, you renounce your egoistic claims to the outcome of your actions. That's really what it means to give, incidentally. A act is not authentic in terms of giving if you have retained any of your egotistical claims to the thing given. What is commonly called Indian givers. Now you giving somebody something. Now the moment that individual has done something to displease you, you take back what you've given. Materially, emotionally, psychologically, intellectually, you take back everything you give it. I'm through with you. I'm angry at you. Give me back everything that I've given you. Well, you've never given it in the first place. To give a thing is to renounce your claim to recovery entirely. That is when the thing has really been given. Please make a note of that, because we are very confused in this area. When we have given somebody something, we give up our rights to recover and reclaim that. We renounce our egotistic and egocentric claims to ownership of that thing. We have given it, and we have given it forever. Forever. It puts you in a very different thing. That's karma yoga. Par excellence. You've given it away. You have renounced your ego claims on that thing forever. There is no asking for it back. It's powerful. But you see how we give? Deep down inside, we still cling to that subliminal ownership of the very thing we've given. Even in the form of our service. Now we do something for our children. And on the surface, we disguise it as an act of pure generosity because they're my child and I love you. Therefore, I give you this Harvard education that is breaking me, right? But deep down inside, it's a subliminal level. We still cling to that money. And when that child failed to do something or actually live up to our expectations that we have imposed upon them, we snatch it back or try to. This is not karma. Karma yoga is to do something and you do it and you make a clean break of it. You renounce all ego claims to the outcome of that action and dedicate it to God. You see, let God be the beneficiary of your good works. That is karma yoga by excellence. In fact, that one concept has become the cornerstone of many religions. In fact, the Baha'i religion, that is its principle. They consider worship as service to humanity. That is worship in the Baha'i system. You see? Yes, sister.
What you were speaking of before, when you give something and then you try and take it back, a lot of people have mistakenly assumed that to be a form of power.
Yes.
If they have that kind of control over a person.
Yes.
And I know, in the home, even in this quote-unquote struggle, the black struggle, it's all about the white supremacy. When you listen to a lot of people, you're hearing that they have the ability to give and stop that giving at any instance, and that is a form of power.
Yes, and we know that this power and this control are always inches where there's attachment. You see, from our earlier examination. So you're absolutely right, Lily, that is the case, which really disqualifies it as any real spirituality. It's not an authentically spiritual act. And you're right. You know, there's something wrong with any kind of supremacist mentality, black or white. There's something very sick in that. You see, something very sick in that. Or any gender supremacy. Big problem is that there's a lot of gender supremacy. You know, men feel there's just supreme to them. You see? Now, of course, this is nonsense. But women, like blacks, have been indoctrinated for so many centuries with this nonsense that they start accepting that inferior position and acting out that mythology. You see? It's a very ugly phenomenon in any form that it takes. But any sense of supremacy over anybody, you see, it's just madness. It is the foundation of insanity. Yes, Khadija.
I think comment what Louise is saying is that the real ultimate thing is that people who do those kind of behaviors can turn around and name it the behavior of someone that they did that to.
Right.
And have the rest of the world saying that someone else is an Indian giver when they in fact were the ones that gave to the Indians and took that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Hence the even term that we got was derived out of this kind of hypocrisy. But the point I'm making is that when we practice Kama Yoga and our ideal, our divine ideal, because we have to be governed by a divine ideal, whatever it may be. You're, of course, entitled to form your own divine ideal, but the ideal must be of a divine nature. But the Hindus have called it divine ideal, a holy ideal. That informs your karma yoga, your disciplining yourself to with the doing of selfless deeds and actions whose fruits are dedicated to God. There has to be the renunciation of any ego claims to the end. And I tell you why, it's for your own. This is something you do in your own behalf, because whenever you are clinging, even on a subliminal level, to the outcome of your actions, and whenever those outcomes fail to meet your expectation, you experience some trauma inside. You experience tension inside, stress, something, misery. Right? You have to do it, and you have to do it so thoroughly, so completely, that you're able to make that break. And the key is forever. It is gone. This is the heart of what we call the spiritual practice. When we come and talk about meditation, and we're going to talk just a little bit about Raja, the last method for managing the ego in terms to enable us to manage the attachment that issues from that ego in our personal relationship. We're going to talk about Raja Yoga. But last time you were here, if you recall, I mentioned the fact that a possibility will be there if enough of you like to do maybe a 10-session workshop on just pure spiritual practices. You know, that whole thing. Going into the mechanics now of all of that, because it's a large subject. But the point I'm making is that when you enter into your spiritual practices, and that time that you have set aside for your spiritual practices, and that's usually the first problem with the novice. They cannot be consistent, they cannot be punctual, and they cannot be regular with their time that they have set aside for their devotion. Whether that devotion is in the form of prayers or meditation or what have you. It tends to be sporadic, right? They tend to try to squeeze that in if they have time, if they've gotten to bed on time the night before, if they're feeling rested or not. They make their spiritual practice conditional on a lot of other stuff, and hence they never ever attain any real depth. And why? It's because they have not given the time. When we talk about tithing, the real tithe is your time. The economic tithe, anybody can do that. What's so difficult about it? It's just a few dollars. No big deal. But you got plenty of dollars. You give a few of them, okay. It is your time that you're most attached to. If you really want to know your attachment, track your time. See where your time is going. And what are you putting most of your time? You'll get a great insight into yourself. What is most of your time being devoted toward? What is the goal behind the way you spend your time? What is the underlying motivation that informs the way you spend your time? You get a good insight. Because it's hard to get around that ego of ours. This ego is so subtle, it's so clever, it can rationalize and disguise all kind of things. But your time speaks to where your interests really lie. Irrespective of what you're saying on the mental level. With clocking. You see? That's proof that we put it. So now if you're spending all your time sleeping, okay, then be clear. You know, you're attached to the bed. Now, nothing wrong with that, but you may have to rearrange your mythology and say, I don't love people, I love beds. I love sleeping. Now you're clear because here's your time. If you're spending 25 hours a week watching basketball, then you should say that basketball is your greatest joy because that's where you spend all your time. You spend more time watching basketball than you do with helping your children do their homework. That's where you are focused. And you can't just escape into your mythology if you look at your timeline. It's not possible. It's very revealing. So, the problem again with time is that the time that we have dedicated to our own concept and ideal, and highest ideal that is, of what it constitutes building our relationship with deity. Whether that is prayer, meditation, study of scripture, that's for each of you to determine that yourself. But whatever it is, and you set aside that prescribed time, and you can't really get it because you haven't given away the time. If you really understand that I am taking this 1 hour out of my 23 hours, I am giving this to the God or to the Lord or to worship, I renounce all ego claims to that time frame forever. Then you will be able to do it. But as long as you think that that hour in the morning at 3 o'clock is yours to be used for the worship of the Lord at your discretion or not, then you will be inconsistent. And you will never know what it means. It won't be pure. There'll be no quality. There'll be no depth in it. Because you are still attached to the time. You're trying to control it. You have to give away that time forever with no expectation whatsoever. Not even enlightenment. It's profound. You see? It's profound. And so you'll begin to see as we move more seriously on the path that this ability to get into that mindset really comes. With our children, whatever we do for our children, we must do for our children. Now that's just in them, right? For all time. With no more ego claims. That one homework alone will do wonders to alleviating a lot of the mystery that we have. Just getting large-hearted like that. You see? And to relinquish this pettiness, this tick for tat that we play. You see? And disguise that as justice. What you call injustice is petty. It's tick for tat. It's eye for an eye. There's nothing compassionate or merciful in that. It's business. Okay, nothing wrong with that. But just be clear. And don't deceive. Don't call business spiritual development. They're not the same thing. And you just have to be clear. So now we'll say just a little bit about Raj Yoga. Raja is a Sanskrit word that means kingly. It has been called, therefore, the king of all methods. The supreme method for dealing with this ego and the attachment that ensues from it and all of the problems that it causes in our personal relationships in the form of attachment. What to say of attachment? It causes ultimately all our anger, outbursts, all our greed, all our lust is tied into this ego. And this has been called the supreme method for managing ego. Raja Yoga. And Raja Yoga involves, the first thing is meditation. Meditation. many parts to this yoga. We won't cover them all today, obviously. I'm introducing them to you. But meditation is there. And why meditation? Because remember I said before, the ideal is to transcend the ego. By transcending, I mean, when I say meditation, to lose all awareness of your ego. To lose complete awareness of that. Well, you're no longer even aware of that's who you've been thinking you are. It's very hard to manage the ego while you're still holding on to it. But it is a complete transcendence of the ego. You no longer even identify with that personality no more. At all. You transcend it. You're no longer your history. Can you understand? You transcend the historical context out of which your ego emerged. You're no longer the same person at all. There is a break in your actual sense of identity. That experience occurs in meditation. And unlike in Jnana Yoga, where the transformation is triggered by great realization, in Raja Yoga, the transformation is experienced by experience. It is triggered by the experience. You actually experience not being the body. You don't run through a rigorous logical analysis and therefore conclude that I am not the body because the body is mine, etc., etc., etc. You see? It's all of that, but more. You now actually have the experience of not being in this body. Like you feel this body, you're so caught in, all your attention is in this body, you feel it. I am talking about in meditation, you will lose all sensation of a body. You will not even feel your body at all. You will feel none of the gravity of your body. You ever see like when you cross your legs too long and go dead, you know what I'm talking about? And you be all, trying to, because you can't feel it no more. I'm talking about when the whole body goes numb. Strange experience, but you remain totally conscious. You lose the experience of being contained in this body, and you kind of just fill up all that space that has been surrounding you all the time. It's a very different experience than anything that we go through that just involves the thinking process. Meditation gives you the experience of not even being your likes and dislikes, because now you think you are your likes and dislikes. I like this, I dislike that. But the emphasis of your identification is on the thing like or the thing dislike. I'm someone I don't like milk. Now the feeling is that you really don't like milk. The you that is your essence has no preferences at all. It has no desires. Desires belong to this ego, not to the self. The self is without no desire. The self is just in a existent mode. It moves, it flows, it's in harmony, it's in my art. It has no preferences. It moves, it flows. It is endowed. It is the ego and it's the personality that it forms that have all these likes, dislikes, and preferences, not the self. Why? Because the self, by definition, is in a state of peace, bliss. You need not do anything. Your original nature and your essence is one of peace and bliss. You need not do anything. Strange. I know it sounds strange, but in meditation you actually have that experience of not being your emotional set of likes and dislikes. You transcend the emotions. In fact. Nor is there the experience of being the mind. Because the most that we can do is feel that, oh, I'm my mind. Your mind, your emotions, your body. That's the extent that you can experience your being. You can feel your body, right? You're cognizant and aware of your likes and dislikes, and you can hear yourself think. And that's about as far as you can go. Through the course of meditation, you're able to transcend your mind thinking itself. Because we can't imagine. How can you be aware and have experience if you don't think? The experience of meditation is that not only will you have experience, you will have it more abundantly and clear. Experience become clear. Thinking distorts experience. I know you find this hard to believe. Thinking actually distorts experience, not enhances it. But we've been thinking that the more we think, the sharper we bring into focus reality. It's absolutely the reverse. The more you think, the more unfocused reality becomes. You actually distort it. And in meditation, and when that eye of Heru, that third eye, that Tizratil, opens for the first time, it is through that vision that you see for the first time reality. And you see plants shivering with color. You hear sounds going with sight. You can see the form that sound takes and see the color of form, the sound that form makes. I mean, you see the reality that your thinking and your senses will never see. Meditation is that method, you see, that opens up these higher faculties in man, you see, and make all these parts of our experience. So, and that's why Raja Yoga is said to be the king, because nothing replaces that. That's bottom line. You see, that's bottom line. That's the real deal. And that is what Raja Yoga is. You are transcending all of your mistaken notions of who you are, beginning first with the body, then at the level of your emotions, and then ultimately at the level of your mind. You transcend all identifications that you have with that. Right? And when you hit the mind, what do I mean when I say you transcend mind? Because I'm not just talking about transcending the chatter that goes on in your head. That too goes out. This constant dialogue that is going on in your mind, in your head, where you're listening to commentary going on. You see, that is low thinking. I'm talking about even the higher components of the thinking process: time, space, and causality. These mental experiences drops out. You cease to have experience of time in the subjective psychological sense that you have in mind. Gone. No more experience of time. What do we call the absence of the experience of time, or when time ceased to be linear? We call that eternity. You step into eternity. That's what eternity is. You see, it's a very different experience. Time drops out. You experience, but without time. I know it sounds strange. You have the experience without the limitations of space and confinement.
So we were talking about meditation and the different awakening the different faculties within one, and we were talking about this level of own, which opens up. You become like you get the three qualities of the Creator: omniscient, omnipresent, and omnipotent. Is that the same level of Raja? Is that what they're talking about?
Yeah, Raja has as his aim and objective to move us back into the experience that is available to us whenever we return to our original state of awareness, which is God. You will have the same experience that God is having. That's what enlightenment is. And you will experience that. You will actually experience it, not think about it. The emphasis is on you actually experience. Long, arduous, difficult, don't misunderstand me. You see, you don't get it the same day that you start your practices. That's to be clear. Because a great purification, a great preparation has to be gone through, and all these other things. We'll talk about that too next time as we go deeper into this particular method. Incidentally, for our times that we live in, this method is very powerful. This is probably the best method for this Yuka, this Kali Yuka, this time, this dark age that we live in. Because the mind is not capable of so much faith. It has to have an experience. And better times and in golden ages and silver ages and iron ages is when man had not yet deteriorated so much. They had that kind of faith where they could apply themselves to a spiritual discipline just on faith. In our modern times, that's not possible because we're pretty much McDonald-minded. We're used to instant everything, and we also want instant enlightenment. You see, I want a 6-month course in how to become enlightened. You know, if you can't do that, I got to move on to something else. So this path then becomes the best path for this youth, simply because, of course, it can't give us our 6-month experience, but if we hang in there, it gives you an experience so that you're not dependent upon your blind faith and all this other stuff. You know, no belief in any scriptures are required, no particular religious orientation is required. This is science. You know, this is the science and physics of enlightenment. And whether you believe in God, don't believe in God, it makes no difference with this approach, right? So the emphasis is in meditation in Raja Yoga. And of course, introspection. Introspection. These become the two principal primary parts of Raja Yoga. Intense introspection and meditation. Sort of like a combination of all the 3 yogas, you know, rolled into one, right? The kingdom of the yogas. Now, much can be said about this meditation. As I said before, we could spend 10 weeks just talking about meditation. The subject is really, truly that vast. I mean, why not? People can spend a lifetime talking about this. But Raja Yoga is actually the conscious and deliberate practice of a system of meditation that has as its objective to confer it upon you of the actual experience of being that which is transcendent to your ego. It is the actual experience of the self. It is a methodology for the experience of self, direct, firsthand. And it's a tremendous discipline. So unless you know or have a system of meditation, it's very difficult. I can't give you a homework on that because if you don't know how to meditate, then, you know, there's nothing you can do, right? Yes, Shanae?
Is that something that's possible? Would you be thrown into a place, from a situation or an experience?
No, what happens accidentally is what we call satori in the Zen tradition. A satori is a glimpse of this reality. Much like in on a stormy night when lightning strikes and for a moment it lights up the forest, you can see the trees, but only for a second. And then you're plunged back into your darkness. And we all get a satori in some sense of the word. We all get an experience of transcendence in life. That's a given. Every human being get a satori built into their experience. Right? And the ideal is to convince you somehow that there's a higher reality than what you're dealing with. It gives you a little, it breaks that, as Khadija said earlier, it interjects something radical into your experience. Now, you may not be able to process it. You know, you may have a vision and you see something and then it's gone. And it may happen when you were 6 years old, so now 50, 40 years, 30 years, 20 years later, you can play with it and discount it, say, oh, I might have been fantasizing. You know, I mean, you can minimize it. But the point is that in each of our life, all of us, every human being is given a satori experience. It is experience that is proof for you, firsthand, of a higher reality. You see? And then it's gone. Raja Yoga and the experience that you get in Raga Yoga is no satori. It is permanent. You see? It's a permanent experience. So you're right in some sense, Shanae, when you say accidentally. Yes, accidentally you can get a glimpse. You see? And that glimpse is almost always experienced surrealistically. You notice that? There's time when the world becomes a little surrealistic. It's as if you are like walking in a dream. The world takes on, for a moment, it takes on a dreamy-like quality, and you are peculiarly aware that, hey, am I dreaming? What's going on? You feel very detached from it, much like you just observing the situation. You cease being caught up in it for a moment, and it takes on a very surrealistic nature, and then it disappears. Right? And the outcome of Raja Yoga is, for the first time, you will experience the world continuously like it's a movie, a drama. And you'll be able to enjoy it because you know this is a drama. It's not even real in the sense that you've been thinking it's real. And you enjoy it. You see? You enjoy it. But you're no longer caught up in it. You're no longer drowned in it. And that understanding is rooted in your experience. Actual first-hand experience. Now, you have to understand that the body has points in it, centers we call them, chakras. Chakra is a wheel, energy in fact. It's a whirl of energy that connects us with the forces of nature. For instance, at the Muladhara chakra at the base of the spine, that is the chakra that gives you the experience of gravity. You see, that's how you feel gravity, one of the four forces of nature. So here, at the base of the spine, your rectal area, right? When they call it the Lord Ganesh in Hindu. When you pull your attention above this chakra, when you get your attention out your ass, all right? Literally speaking. Then what happens while you're sitting here in your body, you will lose the feeling of gravity. Now, with the loss of the experience of gravity, you feel like you're levitating. When we talk about reaching that level of meditation where you levitate, no one is talking about flying around on no carpets. You understand? You've been thinking that you haven't made, that we're just going to take up on a carpet and fly around. You see, because that's what has come out in the myth of the thing. Because people that don't do this don't know. No, you will have the experience of floating because you have lost the experience of gravitation. You understand? You lose the experience of what that astronaut is feeling in space, just floating, unconfined. You have that experience. You don't feel the pull of gravity because this chakra is what is responsible for that. Right? So similarly, with each of the chakras up the back of the spine, all the way up to the crown of the head, the Sahasrara chakra, as they call it, you see, is responsible for a part of your experience through your senses. And as you pull yourself and transcend it, you start having these different experiences. You go past the navel center and get to the heart center. Here you lose the experience of time when you pull the attention up here. So that's it. Time is experienced through that chakra. Time is not experienced objectively. Time is experienced subjectively. Get my point? So it's so many different things. I mean, it's really, really fascinating. It is a fascinating thing. But the whole ideal in meditation and this particular discipline is to give you the experience of yourself. And in the process, necessarily, you transcend your sense of former identity in the sense of ego. You see? Yes, sister?
What does the term deja vu fit in there? It's like you're talking the feeling of deja vu.
Deja vu, yes, that you've been here before.
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, you see, when you get up here to the Ajna, which is called the Ajna chakra, there's what they have called literally the Akashic records. I don't know if you're a student of metaphysics or not. The Akashic records Because here you're getting ready to transcend the mind. So as you pass through the mind, you see all the experiences that you've been through. You see the fact that, my God, you've been married to this man 10,000 times. You see, I mean, it's really a strange thing. You know, you begin to recognize for the first time the immense repetitiveness of your life. A million times you have worked, tried to make a living, bought a house. You understand? You see how you've been just moving in this circle, this wheel of a Bhagwan, they call it, this wheel of charasi, right? This wheel of life. And you just been moving. You've not been going anywhere, just in circles. And then you start having that experience of deja vu. Ooh, I've done this before. Right, you have done it before. Ooh, I've been here before. Right, you have. But everybody has a certain experience of deja vu. What few of us ever have is to sit down with the Akashic record before reading and see. You know? So that your deja vu is not just because, oh, I've been in this restaurant before and it feels like, but the car still feels new, and the person you're in the room with still feels new. You see, in the streets you're driving now still feels new. It's just one little component of the experience feels new, right? The higher experience, but all of the components of the experience feel deja vu. Different experience then, isn't it? Right? It's a very different thing. The deja vu is total. You see?
It's what?
The deja vu becomes total. It spreads over the entire texture of the experience. You just get my point?
Just one little
Rather than
aspect.
one little aspect of it, right?
That's what we usually get
We get just a little tiny aspect of it, sort of like a satori.
That's
Just
what
a little
I thought
glimpse.
of.
Yeah. So deja vu is like that. A sense of repetition, a sense of repeating something that you've done before. You get a little glimpse of the reality that you have been here many, many times before. You know, a little sense of it, right? And you don't know really how to process it in your mind. You try, oh, I must have been here when my mama must have brought me here when you try to find some way to take it out of that realm. But it don't fit into any kind of rationalization process. The fact of the matter is that some deep down inside said, man, yeah, I've been here before, I knew this person. And that's how you really relate to people. There are people that you meet that you just have that sense, ooh, you know, I know her, oh, I know him. We've been together before. We was doing, we old souls, we kindred. I mean, you have that feeling with certain people. And some people you just naturally just bond with. Like you've been knowing them all your life. Probably in some other life. You have known them all your life in some other life. And that subliminal reality is there in the unconscious, right? And it bubbles up and you have that instant bonding. Some people you just don't like. You just don't, they ain't done nothing to you. You just don't like that person. Now, somewhere in the past, perhaps, you have been bitter enemies, or husband and wife, yeah, perhaps. Who knows, right? Same thing, right, Stephanie? The point I'm making is that all of this, these mysteries are resolved when you have crossed the ice and now have access to the Akashic records that are stored on what they call the astral plane. You know, like this is the physical plane, then there's the astral plane and the causal plane, and then the purely spiritual planes of that. So it's a very fascinating experience. All of this then is what the aim and objectives of the Raja Yoga is. Yes, sister?
I have two questions.
Yes.
You were mentioning the part of the spine where it controls the gravity.
Yes.
Is that the part, I think the coccyx, in which when you're born, the doctor hits you and then you know, the baby's
This is
crying?
also the part where the Kundalini sits core. Kundalini is the surface energy, the life force, what our ancestors called Ra.
Okay.
Okay? The electromagnetic energy that is coming from the sun, right? That we are taking into the system through photosynthesis of plants, and we ingest that energy after the process of digestion and metabolization. That energy is stored here in this chakra, the Muladhara chakra. And then at the chakra above that, this chakra, this is where it's converted into semen. You know, that's why you'll find that it takes 40 drops of semen to make 1 drop, 40 drops of blood to make 1 drop of semen in the male, because it's converted into this point. And that's energy, physically and psychically sits here. And they call it a serpent-like energy because the snakes are, right? And so that when, through meditation, when you stimulate this energy, you start bringing it up, all right? And this energy starts opening up all of these higher faculties along the base of the spine. Now that, I mean, all your experience that you're having is connected on the back of your spine. You understand? I mean, if you're going to identify with your body, technically, you're just a spine. You see, so don't take offense when people call you. Right? They're really being very accurately describing you. So that energy is really there. You see.
I have been thinking this week, you know, about what is it about a child, you know, like in meditation,
And
what you're trying to
here
achieve.
too.
Okay. Because, I mean, you know, in a child, you know, from the time it's born, it does many things that you're just totally just amazed. And as I was working at the Boys and Girls Club this week, that came to my mind, because I'm like, you all, you know, we learn how to hold our bottles at certain ages and, you know, do so many things. And it's not like, you know, as parents or as an aunt who has 5 nieces and nephews who've seen them grow up, you know, it's you expect these things after you have one child. Okay, I expect this baby should be holding this bottle by him or herself at a certain age. But by the time they get to when they come down to the Boys and Girls Club, they want to stop all mental process, you know, progress at all. And when I tell them this, it's like they begin to think for the first time. You know, because I tell them, if you can do this, if you did this at these early stages of your life, and now somebody's asking you to try and develop or master certain techniques, you kind of like tune out, or you just don't even want to do it. You don't even want to do it. You know, it's just something. All week I just been thinking about what is, you know, in terms of us being children.
What is
you know,
going on?
Right, what's going on?
Here's what is happening is that before the ego gets involved, then we are unfolded naturally. You have to understand, Loretta, is that we are like a seed, and we are unfolded. Those divine qualities that lies at the core of each of us in the form of our essence are really simple reflections of God. That we are miniature versions of God. That the only essential difference is quantitative, not qualitative. This omniscience and omnipresence and omnipotence that you talked about, these characteristics of God, along with Sat Chit Ananda, truth, bliss, you know, joy. These qualities, you see, are inherent in all of us, but in a seed-like form, right? And the whole process of life is the unfoldment of these qualities through stages. You see, enlightenment is natural. It's the most natural thing in the world. But what happens very often is that the seed falls in an environment that is not nurturing. A culture that fails to culture. Because that's what human culture is supposed to do. It's supposed to help these human seeds grow, bloom, blossom, and attain the full potentiality of their human beings. Right? And when a culture fails to do that, then you see this shutdown, this stunted growth, right? This lack of nourishment, this recalling from this natural process of the acquisition of knowledge. To acquire knowledge is a very natural thing. We all start off like that, right? And you say, what happened, Bhagwan, to them? Well, the culture, the environment, you see, which has a lot to do with their karma and things of this nature. It's a big story, you see. And we cannot really technically judge the value of this experience just on this little lifetime. You have to see how this is going to help this child 10,000 lifetimes from now. You have to understand that looking downward, the time frame is very different. We look at these children in this lifetime, and we look at these people, these children that we figure, oh my God, they wasted their whole human life. They died of an overdose of drugs. Well, we think that story has ended. That story has not ended. And you may not understand how that one episode of drug addiction in this particular incarnation will play out 10,000 years later in helping this soul attain Buddhahood. But it will play a role. So we have to even understand the different scale of time that we judge the outcome of these single behaviors in this life. It all works out. Some are unfolding at different accelerations than others, naturally. You see, but that's what gives life this variety. But the point is that we are unfolding. Because essentially you cannot become that which you are not basically already. Please make a note of that. You can never become that which you are not potentially already the case. An apple tree does not gain somewhere in its growth cycle the ability to be an apple tree. It is in the seed. It's the potential. In fact, all the knowledge that you will get is already in you. It's just a question of unfolding of that knowledge. That's all. And so it is with these children, this cycle, right? Perhaps in this particular incarnation, in this particular birth, there was an interruption in the natural unfoldment process, right? And then they pull back. It's okay. You see? Somewhere in their journey, they will be all right. You know, the universe will take care of that. But we should not use that as an excuse not to play our role. You see what I'm saying? Otherwise, we make the mistake of becoming fatalists, right? And we make the assumption that we know, you know, the detailed strategy of the universe. That's perhaps is a level of knowledge we cannot arrogate to ourselves, right? So we have to still do the best that we can to spur those young people who are stuck in their growth cycle on. And that's not only the case, Loretta, with young kids, it's the case with all of us. If you look in your relationship that you have with people, and you can almost see to what extent you have been effectively demonstrating love and radiating love on that individual because you can see their state. Imagine them being a plant of some sort, a flower of some sort. Imagine them as being plants in your garden. And you can imagine what would be the state of the plant in your garden if you had failed to water that plant, if you failed to put enough good soil down for it to get the nutrients that it needs, whatever they may be, the nitro and all that other stuff, and have kept it disconnected from the sunlight. Well, you would expect that plant to be a little shriveled, won't you? It will not be as full of life, as green, as beautiful as it has the potential to be. Well, you look in your relationship and look and see the people that you're in relationship with. What is their condition? Are they all shriveled up? Are they in bad shape? For most of us, the answer is yes. Are they full of bitterness? Anger at us? Yeah. Feelings of being unloved, unwanted, disrespected, of no value? Yes. It could be then that we have failed to give that plant in our life proper nutrition in the form of our love. Or look at our relationship period as a whole, the dynamic of it, you know. I mean, it's an amazing thing, you know, when you stop and look at it like that. Sandra had mentioned responsibility somewhere earlier, and I thought that was interesting, and it was just too deep to go into that. But if it is the case that there is some responsibility in relationships, then perhaps that responsibility is to make sure that the relationship is being filled with an adequate flow of love to keep the other party to your relationship from withering and crumbling. And we could just look. We don't have to be a rocket scientist. Are the people around you happy? And if not, of course they're probably miserable. And a lot of times it's not even so much solely because you, but you want to see to what extent you are contributing to their misery. You might be the major source. Who knows? you have to investigate. Yes, Khadija.
I think it was like when you were saying about how our thinking starts to block things. We went to visit someone who lived in a row house, and they had a lot of plants in just one big mirror, one big window. And the plants always looked contorted to me because they were all leaning towards trying to get the sunlight. And I was thinking as humans, we probably lost that instinct to try to find that light. You're talking about we're waiting, or sometimes our psychology, we start writing things saying, well, I can't be successful because my parents weren't educated and I didn't do this and the other, and we will stop trying to even get something that a plant might have just the instinct that if I have to twist my trunk, I must get to that light.
Move towards the light.
Yeah.
And you're right. We human beings are unique in the whole scheme of things because we are the only forms of life that have been allowed to have choices. You're not forced right now to become like stay in the down. Animals, plants have no choice but to live. We have given the choice because the path is about love, and the understanding is that you can't force nobody to love you. That's an amazing thing. We were talking about, earlier about what's under your control, what's not under your control, but no one can make you love them, nor can you make anybody love you. Love is not something that can be manipulated from the outside of a person. Love has to be given by each of us out of our own free will. It's really interesting. So in that sense, you see, we're all beggars. If I want your love, all I can do is, like a beggar, stand with my bow. There's nothing I can do. I cannot manipulate you. I cannot threaten you. I cannot push you into a state of love. I cannot threaten you into a state of love. I cannot try to reason you into a state of love. That's a very popular method with men, I must tell you. We like to try to give you such a logical proposition that you're forced by our logic to love us. And of course that never works. But we've never learned, you see, because of our orientation. Point is that we have to understand that we can do nothing when it comes to another person's love for it. It is purely an act of their own free will. Nothing we can do. Nor can anybody make you love them. It is your own free will. You see? It is a tremendous thing. So God is like that. God cannot and will not make you love him. Please make a note of that. If you've been waiting for God to make you love him, then you're going to be waiting a long time because that's never going to happen because there is no force. There is no intimidating. You understand? Right. Because that will taint it, won't it? It won't be pure. It must come from you. Many of the beautiful stories in the Bible of the suffering of these great prophets, the horror that they went through, and when many of them were asked by many of their contemporaries, Moses, I thought you were the so-called beloved of God. You know what I mean? Look what he's doing to you, or Jacob or one of these prophets. Look how you suffering, blah, blah, blah. And even the beloved of God began to wonder, said, Lord, what are you doing? What are you up to? Why are you letting me suffer like this? If I am I'm your beloved and all of this, we are lovers, why is this? What? I don't understand this. Why hast thou forsaken me? Is a common experience of all Christians. Some just only have it on the cross, but there's been many who have it long before they get to the cross. It is a sense of being forsaken. Why? And the answer has been the same, because I wanted to demonstrate to those who are watching that here's a devotee who will love me under any kind of condition, no matter what's happening. That their love, you see, transcends, that is not conditional. Mirabai, beautiful mystic, female, Sufi, says in one of her rudiyat, she says, Lord, she says, my wish is that you should destroy heaven and destroy hell, both, so that people neither worship you out of the greed for heaven, nor the fear of hell. Purity. Mirabai said, Lord, keep me however you like. Now, this does not matter to me. If you want me to remain rich, fine. Sick, okay. Makes no difference. In fact, Mirabai said, Lord, you want to send me to hell? Fine, no problem. I have no objection. You want to give me cancer? Let's give it. My love will not win. This is a very different state, you see. Now, naturally, what can the Lord do with a beloved like that? You understand? And when people come and they look for God, they say, God, I've been looking, I've been praying, you know, and for 40 years, I can't find you, you're absent. And God tells us first that you will only find me in the hearts of my beloved. I live nowhere else. If you therefore want to find God, you will not find him in the scriptures. He's not in the Bible, he's not in Quran, he's not in Gitas, he's not in Vedas, he's nowhere in Torah or Talmud. He's not in any scroll, any idol. The Lord lives in the hearts of his devotees. And that's where you will find. You will get a taste of it. And not teachings, presence. It's very different. These great gurus and masters, what is unique about them is not that they're teachers. You know, we're teachers, right? Their greatness lies in just their being, just in their presence. Something different happens. Like that plant, Khadija, you talked about, reaching toward the sun. Just in the presence of the sun, it turns. The sun is not giving a long discourse. Hey, plant, turn toward me, worship me. No. Plant, here's your sadhana. No. Just the presence of the sun turns the plant. Right? That's how it's been with these great gurus and things. You know, just being in their presence turns you toward God. You understand? Something deep inside you, subliminal, you know, starts having a feeling, boy, I'd like to have had what Moses had. I'd like to have had what Jesus had. You know, I'd like to have had what Kabir, what Ptahotep, what Imhotep, what Kajami had. I like to have what Mirabai, or Mahavir, or Krishna, or Buddha. You know, something in you start wanting that quality in a Buddha. You see? It's a very different experience. Something in you start turning towards the light. Right? And that's the great benefit. You see? It's not ever been their teaching. That's why no Quran can make a Muhammad. Has never made a Muhammad. No Bible can make a Jesus. No Torah can make a Moses. No Gita can make a Krishna. No Dhammadara can make a Buddha. No sutras can make, you know, a Vyasti. It's not possible. They make Bibles. Jesus makes Bible. Muhammad makes Quran. Krishna makes Gita, but not the revelation. So it's a very beautiful thing. So you're right. Something in us gets shut down. And what it is that thinking. It distorts that mind. And that's why in Raja Yoga you have to transcend this mind that is constantly distorting. I'm reminded of a beautiful experience from the life of Ramakrishna. Ramakrishna was a Hindu, African Hindu saint of the latter part of the 19th century. And it's interesting because you can see their lives as it unfolds. I told you it was an unfolding. So they don't suddenly pop on the scene, these mystics, right? You can see the evidence of it from the time they come out of the womb. You can see in that particular soul something unique is going on. It's not sudden all the time. You know, very often it's historical to see the path of it, of a Buddha, right? And the story is told about this Ramakrishna, who became a celebrated mystic sage in the late 19th century in India. And the story is from his childhood when he was a little boy, and they began to notice something very strange about this little boy. It began with an episode one evening out on the outskirts of the village, young Ramakrishna is out playing, and he's running through these bushes, right, out in the field. Bilal ran through him, got cuckabugs in him. It didn't help him. But Ramakrishna was different, right? Running through these weeds like most little boys. And he got to a part of the weeds that he could see over. And he caught in the distance a glimpse of the sky. And the sky was blue. So blue. Pure blue. And it was a billows of thunderclouds floating along. And a flock of wild geese flew across that. And the impact of the purity of the blueness of the skies superimposed with the cloud and the geese was so overwhelming, it knocked Ramakrishna out. They found him. Hours later, he's laying there unconscious. You understand? Because his aesthetic faculty was very developed. Very often you find that these people are very, very developed aesthetically. They have an immense capacity to experience beauty. And look at us. We can't experience no beauty. I mean, it's crazy. Somewhere in the color purple, there's a beautiful line I like, where they said that when you walk past the color purple, God actually gets pissed off. How can you walk past the color purple? But you see, in most of us, our whole faculty to experience beauty is all messed up. And God is beauty. Now, Ramakrishna, of course, later on was amazed when he discovered that, you know, this wasn't normal. Later, as he grew, he was able to not just confine his perception to beauty, his perception expanded so that now he could see God. And so these people went to this temple, you see, and these people in there worshiping the temple of God, you know, let me have a vision. And he couldn't understand. He said, how can you? He said, he's everywhere. Don't you see? Don't you see? He had developed the capacity to see God everywhere. As is the case, because if God is omnipresent, that means he's present everywhere, immanent throughout the creation. That God is in a rat, roach, tree, blade of grass, human being, cow, insect, bumblebee. The question becomes, how can you not see God when God is immanent? Right? And all of our problems ultimately are reduced to our inability to see the divine in everything going on around us, including ourselves. Because how am I going to fight with my wife when I'm seeing God in her? Now I can't fight with her. Do you understand me? I can't be in no conflict, even if I try to fight. Oh, I keep seeing God in the woman. Now, what am I do? You can't do it. You cannot do it. You can only fight and be caught up in this kind of brutal conflict when you are spiritually blind. I mean, absolute spiritual blindness is requisite for most of this conflict. Complete inability to perceive that which is divine. Otherwise, how can you do that? Right? It's not possible. Right? It really isn't. And so that's the whole thing. That is involved in opening up that third eye. In ancient time, they used to carry the ankh. We wear it as fashion. And you just wear it because you're Afrocentric, you read a little this and you read a little that, and you've seen some of the Metu Natur, and then there you saw pictures in the hieroglyphs of these great deities, Heru and Ma'at and Osar and so forth, so on. And so you go buy you an ankh. Not understanding that in those times when a person carried an ankh, it meant they could see. They had this key to life. They had the life force. They can see. These are seers. They have the key to open up. These are masters. Only Buddhas were allowed to carry ankhs. You see we reduce angst to joy and passion. Right? Very different. So it's a lot involved in what you get out of the opening of the third eye, this eye of Heru, this tisratil, this single eye that Christ speaks about. If thy eye be single, then thy body shall be full of light. Because even in this body there's so much, but when we close our eyes, we see nothing but absolute darkness. But how can that be when if physically speaking, this body is composed of the energy of the sun. It is solar by nature. This body is made out of the stuff that light is made out of. It is made out of photons. Do you understand? That's why they say when you go inside, you see yourself in a form of radiant light. Radiant light. Children of the light. Light. We are basically light. So Akhenaten, you see, was not very far off, you see, when he drew that solar disc, right? He was not very far off. He was very, very, very much on the target. So we'll talk next time a little bit more about this method of Raja Yoga for the transcendence of our ego and the attachment that emerges from that ego, and the problem that this attachment in turn causes in our personal relationships. Perhaps if time permit, we will also set aside some time to review anything that we have discussed up until the day, because we discussed a lot. And do bear in mind that I had talked to Sandra. Sandra wasn't able to get here today. Did you talk to Sandra? I'd see. But Sandra has asked if I would do a mini workshop on anger again, because some have not had a chance to tell her, yes, we will do that. So Khadija, would you and Sandra supervise that project? And anybody that wants to take a mini course in the anger management, please refer them to Khadija or Sinead or Sandra. And then you all can compile a list, okay? And I think the price, what was it, $75? What was it last time? $75.
$125.
All right, let's make it $75 so that it puts it in the reach of everybody.
Well, it was $250, but for members it was $125.
So we'll just be $75, members, non-members, and because Christmas is coming and we don't want to compete with the children too much. Then those of you who have an idea for any other workshops, please feel free to submit them. Dorothy, would you coordinate that for us? In the absence, Emma's taking her finals, so she can't be with us. She's got to get all these papers out.
That's what happened with Sandy.
Oh, she's taking her finals too? Yes. Yes, she's behind, so they all got to get caught up. So, in Emma's absence, if you all have an ideal for the next workshop that you would like to do, then you can give those suggestions. And those of you who know that you would like to do a workshop on spiritual training and development, I think maybe a 10-week workshop on spiritual training and development.
Yes.
So we get down to
Absolutely, yes.
Then you see Dorothy and sign your name there. And I think for 10 weeks we'll make it $150. Okay, again, this is the time of year where there's a lot of competition for your dollars, and so we're going to be mindful of that. And then you can see Dorothy and get yourself on her list, and we'll budget that time. After we finish next Saturday, then we'll probably take a 2-week break maybe, and then we will resume with, on a single Saturday, we'll do the anger in the morning, and we'll do the spiritual training and development at the 12 o'clock shop. Okay? So it'll be a long day for me, but it's going to be all right. So that's what we plan on doing. And Emma absent here, if there's anybody that still needs to make payment, Dorothy, Dorothy, you might well do everything, Dorothy. You see, I've already given you your homework. So if anybody that has a payment that they need to make, would you just see Dorothy, and we'll see each other next time. So the homework, never over until the homework is assigned, right? The homework that I'd like you to do is to complete the reflection on the me-mind dichotomy and really get a good sense of what actually belongs to you. What do you really own? Get very, very clear on that. And the nature of me. What is this me that you keep referring to? Who is this me that you keep referring to? Who is this I that you keep referring to? I want this, I want that. Okay, you're telling me what actions, but what is the I itself? You're telling me what it wants, but what is the I that wants the new car? What is the I that wants the house? Who is the I that wants the relationship? Who is this I? Who is this mysterious entity that lies at the base of all your experiences? All right? Try to feel it. Just try to feel it. Just consider it. Just consider it. Just think about it a little bit. Give me an hour next week and just take an hour, a lousy hour out of your busy schedules and just sit and consider that. Feel for it. The nature of this I, me, mine complex. Investigate it a little bit. And if those of you who are very enthusiastic, then you can track your timelines. Those of you who got a real iron cast stomach and can really handle a heavy dose of truth, and, right, and honesty, track your timelines. Map your timelines. Map where all your time is spent. Be honest with it, but look and see where your time is spent. Get some idea of where you belong. Now, are we doing one-on-ones tomorrow? We do. What time we start?
10.
10. What time we in?
3, I think.
And those of you who are on for tomorrow, I guess I'll see you tomorrow.